We have to have a play in AI. What is it that will get us there? There has to be a game plan. That game plan has to be understood by the policymaker, by the market player, by the researcher. All three have to
Yeah.
understand the same game plan. Now, your question is, do we have a game plan like that for AI, right? And is it understood by all the three stakeholders? And the short answer is not yet. We don't have a game plan. I think one of the learnings from the last 10, 15 years is that a good ecosystem is when there is coherence between the underlying tech architecture, market architecture, and regulatory architecture. The data architecture or data economy will have a very big bearing on the AI economy in the future. And we have an advantage because we have continental size data, as a country. We, because of our work in India stack, we are data rich while we may not be economically rich. So that is an asset that we have, which we can build on as we go forward. We know from a tech architecture perspective that there will be, in addition to training data, there will be pre-training models that will be there, and then there'll be post-training that will happen. And we know that the market will split, and there won't be one model that will drive all. For example, we know that the video editing, AI for video or creative, is going to be very different from AI for customer engagement,
Yes.
right? It will not be the same at the product level. It will not be same at the data training level. Certainly data model and applications, right? And same is the case with health. There are going to be pockets of health that will be a completely different thing altogether. Now, knowing all this, you can begin to decide where to play and where not to play, right? So, for example, does it make sense for us to play in health? The answer to that is definitely yes, for a number of reasons. Because, let's say we want to find a way of using AI to do cancer detection earlier, then we have the training data because India maintains cancer registries. Some cancer registries, especially in the southern states, are very good. And if we can find a way to unlock that data and give it to people who will be the modelers for that data, we would have more data than almost any other country. Furthermore, this is one place where there is difficult regulation called HIPAA in the US that will prevent US startups
Yes.
being able to do well. So is this a battle that we should try and win and be in that circle of 3 or circle of 5? The answer is unquestionably
Yes.
a yes, right? So we have to be able to pick our battles. So first is we have to do a triaging of where is it that we can win and where is it that we may not win. And not that we don't try in those areas, but the ones that are lower hanging fruit, we should go for them in a very big way. Look, it is a fact that most individuals will rely on AI to book, let's say, the restaurant in the evening, to open a bank account. It'll be the equivalent of, let's say, what Google Assistant is. Should we let Google Assistant and WhatsApp dominate that?
Yeah.
Or is it possible for us to take a different approach so that Indians are served with AI assistants of India?
Yeah.
Even though they may be running on Android and iPhone. And there's some of us, Umakant, Sony is one of them, and a few others, believe that we have a game plan. So let's put everything that we have to make it happen. Now, what's everything that we have? Everything we have, of course, needs compute. Luckily for us, we are getting compute. The government is very supportive of making compute available. We already have a line of sight to 18,000 GPUs. If we need, I would say, even 10 times more, I think the government is willing to step in to make that happen. So I think, we won't have an advantage with GPUs, but they are strongly committed to taking the disadvantage away, to give us more or less a level playing field. even if it takes public money to be brought in to make it happen. And I think that there's a desire to implement that well. But that will give us table stakes, right? And but where will we get the edge? We will essentially get the edge with talent, and we will get the edge with data. So with talent, we have gaps. We have very good Indians, NRIs in every place. We need to bring them back. So for AI talent to work, you need almost a talent tree. The talent tree is that some people need to come back to be founders of startups.
Yes.
Some people need to come back to be not founders. They say, I would rather be the guy who's the engineering guy who delivers the damn thing. I want to be on the engineering side. Then we need people who come back for industrial labs type R&D, and then academic type R&D. So talent means that we should be able to draw people back. Places that are run so well that they actually are willing to come back into those setups. So we call them corporate FROs, corporate focused research organizations, and academic FROs. And we need to be able to create these new type of FROs because they don't exist today. So I think we need to roll out the red carpet. If we play our cards right, we can do that. So that's one part. I want to spend a little more time about data. Remember, the first version of AI is on so-called public data. And that made sense. Everybody had the same access to data. So if you were sitting in Dubai, you had access to the same data than you had in the US. And therefore, you could build Falcon as a good foundation model, like what Mistral can do or what, OpenAI was able to do and others are able to do. Because the data was more or less the same, then it's a question of applying the right techniques and throwing the right compute. So it was all about who has more compute, who has a more gumption to throw compute. But now things are changing. And they're changing because either the research is telling us that you don't need as much of compute, or you can get more bang for the compute that you have, and we need that kind of thinking. Or the new models that are coming in are based on data that is not in the open domain and may never be in the open domain. So this brings us back to regulation. So Indian approach relies A, on techno-legal regulation, B, on this concept of an AI chain. And the concept of an AI chain is that in this AI chain, data starts as personal data, which increasingly will be in our DPDP system, right? Then it becomes aggregate data. Then it goes into a model. Model becomes an app. App creates an artifact that gets distributed, right? And so this chain is there. Now, in this chain, different countries have taken different approaches as to where should they regulate. So, for example, in Europe, they said, we must regulate the app. App for them is like a car. So they say, we'll not put a car on the road until it is safe for its occupants. And we can't trust the car maker to do the testing to determine whether it's safe for the occupants. So it should be third-party testing. So they're saying the apps should be third-party tested. The US, which has tried to control AI and its dissipation, said, look, ultimately, all these apps will have only a few models. So let's only regulate the small number of foundation models. Because which app do they go into? Kya farak padta hai? So let's regulate the engine. There'll be hundreds of cars that will use the same three engines. Our view in India is that we don't know how the ecosystem will evolve. There's a lot of unpredictability. Therefore, we must think of it as a complex adaptive system and retain the right to intervene wherever it makes sense. For some years, it may make sense to do it at the app level. Some years, it may make sense to do it at the data level. We don't know. In some cases, especially for children, it may make sense to do it at the distribution level, right? So what we are saying is that really our effort, rather than bogging down on where to intervene, is to create this AI chain and make it visible, at least to the regulators. so that they can do pointed and minimal regulation at any one point and gets the job done. Next few years are make or break of for India, because as the supply chains are up in the air, we can find our place in this world, by dominating some
Yes.
parts of the supply chain. If we don't do this in the next 4 or 5 years, it'll become exponentially harder for us to do that. And then we would become just a kind of a services nation. And, it'll be like Thailand. It'll not be like Korea. To summarize, we got to triage the problem, pick the places where we can win. Second is figure out that what would be our regulatory architecture, which I'll talk about. Figure out what will be our data architecture. Make sure we are not disadvantaged for GPU, and finally bring a new class of talent back into India.